I've been teaching this for over 40 years, done it all over the world with secular audiences. I actually got to teach this in a high school in Idaho a few years ago, which was interesting, to say the least. And I had 20 students. They were sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And the day the class started, it was 16 weeks I was teaching in this school. And I was not a certified teacher, so I had to have the guidance counselor in the room with me the whole time. So the very first day of class, we got 20 students. I'm just so excited because it's kind of a launch, you know. Is this going to work in a secular setting? And she said, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you, these 20 students, these are the worst students in the school. They are not the worst as far as academics are being smart. They're just the rowdiest. They get in trouble the most, and they're going to give you the hardest time. That's what everybody thought. So I said, oh, wonderful, awesome, my kind of people. So the very first class, I said to them, I just want you to know, you don't know me, I don't know you, and you're thinking, hey, this is just going to be a breeze, or, you know, this is just an elective, you know, who's this guy? And I said, here's what's going to happen. I said, first of all, I want you to know how excited I am to be able to be with you 16 weeks, because I was told you're the most extraordinary students in the whole school. I didn't tell them they were the most extraordinarily unliked and undisciplined and all that. I just said, you're the most extraordinary. And I said, it's a thrill for me to be with you. And you could see him going, what? You know, who lied to this guy, you know? And of course, you know, I talked about circus, and I said, look, I'm going to do you guys, I'm going to give you a proposition. You do what I say. You go through this course. You're going to love it, number one. I guarantee you're going to love it. I said, I'll teach you all how to juggle. And then at the end of the course, we're all going to juggle in front of the whole school. I was waiting for them to go, yeah, right. They all went, oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we would love that. And we did. We did exactly that with all 20 students. It was so much fun. Before the class was over, it took about 3 weeks for them to really trust me and let me get on their side. And at the end of that time, from then on, for like the next 13, 14 weeks, they were like so excited to come to class. Now, how many of you know that young people live on their screens, right? And what do most adults tell them to do? Put your phone away. Put your phone away. Students aren't supposed to have phones in school. They weren't supposed to have them, you know, in class. And so I thought, well, let's change this. I said, how many of you have a phone? Hold it up. Everybody, right? All 20 hands went up with phones in their hands. I said, okay, put your phone on your desk. I said, every day I want you to come to class with your cell phone. And we're going to have drills, and I'm going to divide the class, and I never let them sit next to in the same place twice, and they had to sit next to somebody different all the time, which was amazing because I didn't know who was a sophomore, a junior, or a senior. I didn't know who was who. And I never did find out till very, very late in class because I never asked. And I learned that as I'm watching, it didn't matter whether it was a guy with a girl with a girl, a guy with a guy. It didn't matter what their age, what class they were in, because it was very interactive. So I would teach for about 15 minutes, and then we had a workbook, and they had to fill out what was in the workbook. And then they had to share with the person next to them. They had to tell the person next to them what they just wrote down. And it's intimate, because it's all about them. We're not doing arithmetic. We're talking about who they are. They never skipped a beat. I mean, they couldn't wait to tell the other person who they were. You know why? Nobody ever asked them to before. Nobody asked them about them. Nobody ever said, hey, let me hear about you. All they ever did was hear about, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, do that. They were just ordered around, like most young people are. And nobody ever got into them and said, tell me about yourself. And so to share with each other, and they felt it was a safe environment, because that was one of the things I was really strong about. I said, you will not be making fun of anybody in this class. Everything somebody tells you, you got to take that as face value and that it's important. It's important to them, and it needs to be important to you. At the end of the class, all 20 of them had what we call a vision flyer. Now, a vision flyer, and this is in all of our materials. A vision flyer says, this is who I am. This is what my purpose is. This is what I've done about it so far. This is what I'm doing next, and this is how you can help me. Would that be worth having? Wouldn't that be worth having? Of course it would. So for a young person, I wish I'd had something like that when I was a teenager. Would have kept me out of a lot of trouble. Then they have to get up. Each person at the end of the class, at the end of the course, had to get up and they had to read out what that was. Now it's only one page front and back with graphics, so it's all very bullet points. They had to get up and share, and then I said, every time somebody shares, I want you all to try and think of something you can say that will improve what they said. You can't put it down, you can only improve it. It was absolutely amazing. We had these 3 girls, I was told they were the worst of everybody. They'd been arrested the year before, all kinds of things. At the end of that class, they got up as 3. The 3 of them got up. And they just said, one of them said, I'm going to do nails. The other one said, I'm going to have a coffee shop. And the other one said, I'm going to do tattoos. And we've already got our building. We've already talked to a realtor. They were 15 years old. They were the sophomores. So does this work? Yes, it works here. It works for teenagers. It works for adults. It works in third world countries. It works anywhere because it's just Bible. It's just kingdom. And it's principles that are proven and have been proven for centuries. The problem is we don't ever teach anybody these things. Wouldn't it have been nice when you were young to have a course that could put you on course for the rest of your life about who you were and what you're supposed to do? And the ability to plan that out and you would feel confident talking to somebody about that. That's what we do. Purpose International Ministries, Global Purpose Strategies, everything we produce is to get as many people as possible to that place where they have that vision flyer in their hand, and of course that's a skeleton. And then we teach you how to flesh it out, how to find the mentors that you need to help you create whatever it is that God created you for. It's not just books. These are not just books. I would find something else to do if I was just going to write books. Okay, because it's long, it's arduous, because I write my books, I don't transcribe them, I don't have somebody transcribe them, I don't do that. I don't have ghostwriters. It takes me a long time to do that. But because I know the need and I know the testimonies I've been hearing for 40 plus years. In fact, I have this one young man who was in that class that I just told you about. That was in 2018. That was in 2018. And his plan was he was going to be a chiropractor. Every couple of months, he calls me or he texts me or sends me an email about where he is in his coursework. And he's almost finished. And he's always, I'm so appreciative. And his parents call me and write me and say, he was so directionless until he went through your class. We were worried about him. Is he going to be anything? And now he's about to graduate as a chiropractor. Thrilled, absolutely thrilled. Yeah, absolutely. So I say all that. I have only a few books back there, and the books, listen, this right here, this is like the beginning of the roadmap. Okay, there's way more to it than that. We've got courses, online courses, and all kinds of other things. But it's a place to start. It's a place to start. And everybody needs to start. We all have to be, I want to hear, like I said, I want everybody to hear well done, not why didn't.